into the issues and come out clearly what the situation exactly is, in order to let the fishermen and those people living in the lake area have some kind of rest. Apart from the interest of the fishermen, the activity is going to increase water pollution, which means that the cost of treatment of water is going to go up. And in the end, it's going to affect the same poor people. Energy generation is also going to be affected. Even water for agriculture is also going to be affected, because the whole system is interconnected. And whatever happens to one area will affect the totality of the system. So it's a serious matter, and I want to make this appeal to you. Thank you very much.
Fishermen, but the whole ecology and the broader economic considerations. Ibrahim.
Thank you very much. Maybe provoke some other thoughts, really. I know Yao in his delivery mentioned that policy necessarily has to influence people's lives. If there is a sort of break, I mean, then you don't have any reason why you should have policy. And we have some reasonably good policies in Ghana, but of course, we're here discussing issues in regards to how those policies are not really getting to affect people's lives positively. But just as it was raised by one of the earlier interveners, I'm also looking at the role of economic justice network in all this. Just as to, not to act the way government would say, have a, what do you call it, an enabling environment, and then the rest, you leave it to the the forces to work out. Because we are here, we're supposed to have a number of members whose lives directly depend on the discussions we're having here. And then you would appreciate that, necessarily, we needed to have them here to really participate. Yes, some of us are representing those particular sectors. But I would have appreciated if we had a number of poultry farmers here, a number of tomato farmers here, a number of, a bigger forum, as was earlier suggested by Yao. And of course, also, to be able to, as a network, create that opportunity for that discourse to happen. Apart from staying at the policy level, discussing issues at the policy level, how could we also develop, I know the minister mentioned things like the business plan, but whole concepts that define engagement of certain sectors in regards to policy that can provide a direction of a sort. It could be a business plan, it could be whatever you can call it, but that provides a direction for membership, to be able to engage with policy in a very constructive way. We could discuss and leave, but we need a certain guide, a certain document that will guide the rest of us who might not be able to be here to be able to engage in these kind of daily discussions. But I think that is one of the areas that we need to begin looking at. How we can have a document that guides people beyond these rooms. Anyone, anywhere in Ghana could easily take a document that provides a certain vision, a certain direction in regards to how, as a farmer, as a taxi driver, as a trader, I could be able to engage with policy in a very constructive way in regards to finance, in regards to other support mechanisms, to really be able to, then we can be able to begin contributing to the sort of economy that we want to have, Or else when we leave it to government, we would talk forever and then would never see it happening. Because they have the power, they have the resources, they determine at each point where the direction should be. If we don't begin influencing it by the numbers that we have in regards to, directing where policy should also go, because we've given guidance, then of course we are going to be in a very big, maybe if I may use a dilemma again, regards to where we should go.
All right, so thank you very much. We actually recognize that these are elements of the discussion tomorrow, but I think you're bringing it up now just shows how central it is, and I think I'm glad for that reinforcement. Tete Vic Sachs.
Earlier in the morning, and because this moment we are discussing the question of policy space, strategic investment, how to ensure that the policy space exists for us to invest in a way that helps us transform our economy. Now, the issue that we discussed in the morning when the minister was here about the investment center law, it's a one key initiative of the government today to try and put in place an investment framework. Because, and this is important, we have to recognize it. So far, okay, maybe they only have a short time in government. It's only 8 months, and they spend half the time talking about think sheets, okay? But the only initiative we have about investment framework is this investment center law. My argument is that the investment center law closes the policy space and returns us to a certain framework of investment, which actually reinforces the primary commodity dependence and structural malfunction that we have. Now, in order to do mobilization, as our people are doing now, asking for, we have to mobilize around a certain target. This investment act is before the president for him to sign into law. So you have a window between now and the time that the president signs it into law to say that this investment act actually is a very negative act, which will close policy space, destroy the kind of structure that we want. So we should think about whether or not we stop. We can help the president not to sign this thing. The president has an option. He can veto it, or he can send it to parliament with revisions. And I think that's a very important thing that we should be considering as we are going forward about how to, how to get it. Now, it connects also to what our comrade now was saying about the voter regime, because in fact, the idea of inviting foreign companies and foreign concerns to come to our country without even knowing what the purpose, because there's a singular act. You invite a foreign operator, come and clear weed in the Volta River. There's no discussion as to what the overall developmental strategy is. What is the role and connection of the Volta River, both as an economic resource and as an infrastructure, is to a certain transformation. As I was saying, the investment law is basically an orphan. It doesn't have a strategy. And that connects to it, because very soon the investment center can say, the director, as the minister said, that they have found out that this is a strategic area of investment. They are promoting something without any framework. So unless we act on this investment bill, which we have a window, we'll probably be missing a great mobilizational chance. Thank you.
To ensure that we aid the president's hand to stop this investment law. He has two options. One is to veto it outright. The other is to propose amendments which will radically reform it and take it back to parliament. So that's before us. Vic, Sachs, Kweku.
Yeah. We need to fight for the political space ourselves. And he talked about mobilizing. And I think that this is a window of opportunity that at this point in time we should grasp that opportunity and make sure that at least something is done about this bill before it goes out. I think it's an opportunity. The other thing is about what Akabile just said about representation and other things. I have a problem with representing, membership and other things. I think at a forum like this, it's
Nothing stops you from bringing them. I agree.
No. Actually, I'm rather on the other side. I think that farmers and whatever are well represented here, because it depends on the level of engagement that they should, to be involved in. And I think at this level, it's not the right time. But as Kobina said, when it comes to mobilizing, then that is where we could involve them. Then about Oga, the gentleman's point. He has a point, and actually it is a Peasant Farmers Association program. We've got some small money that we are supposed to be investigating this Volta Basin issue. What we would do is to carry on with that investigation with the money that we have got, and then maybe feedback to EJN, because we want to be very careful about these things. You want to be sure about what is the actual thing government is doing, what has government done. We want to be very sure about that. So I would suggest that we do the investigation with the money that we have got, and then we feed back to the EJN. And if the EJN could pick it up from there, Thank you.
It is quite clear that the content and direction of government policy today is pushing us further and deeper into the kind of dependency that we've always been we've always been advocating and fighting against. There's no doubt that the EPA issue is something that requires, a specific occasion and discussion. But certainly there are many things in there that have implications for different segments of the domestic productive sectors, which we have to continue highlighting. For example, when we talk about the destruction of agriculture and the fact that many people are moving out of agriculture into the urban centers and depressing the conditions here, socially and economically, I think that we have to highlight more and more the point that was made earlier on about the low productivity, the low yield, because for many of the crops, we are producing something like 30 to 60% of the potential yield. That is woefully, terrible. And yet, attempts to address this question is not one of most of the things that we are consuming at the funerals are important. So, indeed, there are people who have said that funerals constitute the first industry of the country. It may be so. It would have been very useful and interesting if we were using funerals in the circumstance that we find ourselves to leverage domestic production. But here we are using it to leverage import dependency and in the process destroying further our productive basis. How do people finance consumer borrowing? By selling the stock of family and communal properties in one way or the other, directly, indirectly, legally, illegally, and so on and so forth. So, indeed, unless we really pay attention to what kind of space exists for investment opportunities, we are likely to continue, just carry on in the manner that the dependency, oriented policies are pushing us to. Thank you.
To achieve after the forum, how do we create the policy space for our people in the interest of Ghana? And we've tried several strategies, several mechanisms to see how best a policy or a bill, for instance, will address the major concerns that confront our people. But many of them have not been able to resolve it because we've not been able to get that space that we want. So I think that the idea of mobilization is very, very key. Mobilizing people around the issues is one of the strong ways we can do that. The second has to do with how we also relate to those who bring these ideas to rest. These WHOs, our government, even the changes in our government, because irrespective of whether you have NPP or NDC or even CPP in power, you still have the same policies there. And so clearly, we should not try and make one better than the other. The moment we try to do so, there's a lot of compromise. And it also makes it very difficult to bring a close link among the various civil society organizations that have something in common. Because at a stage in a certain government, you see that one civil society organization may find certain things that it's trying to get go. The government is able to listen to that particular CSO. In another government time, another CSO will have some challenges there. So our ability to link up our various struggles together will enable us to create some kind of independence from these controls that we have. That would be one way of getting our space done. The last thing I want to say is that we need to also get our focus on what is happening in the agricultural sector, the issue of increasing yield. Now, studies have shown that one way of actually resolving food shortages, that's what they say, is to actually use modern biotechnology, which is different from the old technology of biotechnology such as grafting and the rest. This modern biotechnology, all you know, is this gene manipulation. What is happening is that there's a lot of private capital drift into that area. The last time I checked, the USA has pledged about $12 million US, and the government has set up this Ministry of Agribusiness Office at the Finance Ministry, let me say. The whole purpose is to move private capital investment, unprecedented in world history in agriculture. And if you look at the substance of what is happening is that ownership is going to be a very key struggle among our peasant farmers and these multinationals, because these are technologies that are owned by them. Though they'll give it to your research institute to do some kind of facade confined field trials, at the end of the day, you are supposed to pay some royalties. Currently, what is being done in Ghana here is royalty free. They've taken it from this agro bioscience from California in terms of the rights that they are conducting the field trials at Fumesu is royalty free. So afterwards, what will happen is that farmers would have to actually pay for them. Now, how are we monitoring that particular exploitation that is emerging? And it's serious because of the amount of wealth that is coming from the private sector into that particular area. And if we're able to join this to what we've discussed so far, we'll be able to close up against these people, because it's very, very, very important. One way that we can get to this policy space.
Presenters spoke about the fact that there is a certain institutionalization of liberal. The current regime actually institutionalizes a certain consumerism, and linked to the fact that Yao pointed to some evolution in terms of, say, the infrastructure we have. Just wanted to draw our minds to something that I think some of us may be aware of. Just also the expansion in the conception of what markets should be. In other words, malls. So I'm wondering whether you are, for instance, given how you posited your presentation, whether we should actually be worried about that whole level of consumerism and conception of it, because I can see the linkage to, say, the markets we have, the concept of the markets we have, and how that is also linked to the supposed retail protection of retail that the review law guarantees for or protects Ghanaians, for Ghanaians. So I'm wondering whether, you think we should be worried about that whole conception of what a market should be.
Better than the political parties who only meet just for elections. At least you go through the motions. However, well, you do better than go through the motions anyway, but at least basically, that's it. My final point before I call the speakers back is that this afternoon's discussion will also pick up on some of the dimensions which are clearly implicit, like the financial system, like the borrowing and so on and so forth, and the whole issue of monetary and fiscal policy and so on. So please, I'll ask you to stay on after lunch for that discussion as well. We'll have Fifi Kwete, who is a former Deputy Finance Minister and is still a Minister of State in charge of financial institutions, financial and allied institutions. I don't know which alliance they're building, but anyway. Okay, so I'm going to call in this, to call in.
And this white Namibian thought that we were asking for political independence to change the economic dynamics. Unfortunately, we got political independence, and that was the end of it. And if they knew that was going to be the case, they wouldn't have raised their children and their own lives in the political struggle. Okay. And that brings me to, we have tackled a number of issues that is not right with our economics. The finance question, the trade question, the consumerism, the agricultural question. And sometimes you realize that we are just touching and going with all those issues. And I think that it will be important that we identify the source of all these dysfunctionalities. And for me, the source is politics. So you have NDC and MPP most likely to come into government and do the same thing. Okay. And our attention in the mobilization exercise should be directed at sorting out our politics. Otherwise, I find it difficult how we can be effective at tackling the agriculture, the land questions, how we can be effective at tackling the voter basing question, and then tackling the mining question that we have on our hand. For me, it's all about policy space. And policy from the French word politique has something to do with politics. Using politics in a way to change the current situation. So policy and politics are bedfellows. And the only way we can create that policy space is generate the momentum that put pressure on the politicians or change the nature of politics in this country.
so that we can be effective at addressing the challenges that we face. And I agree with Yao on the issue of having the bigger forum where you can have the heads of all the institutions, the TUC and everybody there. But that should be linked up with the little mobilization work that should occur in the markets, in the farms, that should occur in the trotros. I personally have a policy of sometimes stopping, parking my car and joining the trotro. And the reason I did that was that, in fact, until 2008, I didn't have a car. And anytime I close from work, I go to Circle. You understand? And you stand in a queue for a long time. Sometimes it will be raining. But the prayer of everybody in that queue is that, God, please help me to get a car. And you get your car, and then you never go back to see what is happening at Circle. So the issue of transportation for workers remains forever. Because those who have the wherewithal to be able to do something about it have their own cars now. They never go there. They don't know what is happening anymore. But that, and for all of you who probably now have cars, that problem that confronted you when you didn't have a car still persists. And if you don't do that, you realize that you sit in a car from your home to the office, you have an air-conditioned car, your office is